Hey guys, Wednesday night. I'm Don.
I'm Dan.
You're watching Reality Brief. We got a special guest tonight, Andrea. Hey, how you doing tonight, Andrea?
I'm fine so far. How are you?
Great. So you're talking to us from Austria, right?
Yes, Austria, Vienna. Mm-hmm.
Your specialty, I guess you could call it, would be trauma-based mind control, and that's your website up there on the screen, traumabasedmindcontrol.com.
Yes, I'm specialized on the symptoms of the small and smallest ones when all this mind fracture and basic programming is starting.
So how did you get into this? Like, what was your circumstances into like finding out about all this stuff?
Well, I came into this topic over my son when he was 2.5 years old. He, after actually not even half a year visits with his daddy, he came home and had quite all of a sudden horrible flashbacks, telling me the most crazy, horrendous things you've ever heard. But within the flashbacks, there was no doubt that he had suffered something severely. So I was trying to puzzle out what might have happened without knowing anything about satanic ritual abuse or MK Ultra. And I started to write down line by line what he told me, also describing his language, his body language, what triggered him and so on, and sent it to courts, and always asking to have him examined in detail over MRT, CT. Courts refused. We were thrown out of hospitals without any detailed examination. And Austrian government then took him away. Now I know because he recognized 72 perpetrators involved in his basic mind fracture and also as programmers or MK Ultra trainers. And afterwards they just claimed, well, yes, no, the boy would be healthy and would have nothing. So the blame was put on me as a kind of deputy or a scapegoat. And after that, they just presented me under supervised visits my highly traumatized son very openly. So he's officially in an MK Ultra program. With no chance to get help for him, no chance to get any examination. This is the status now since 2011. So he's ongoing in a program for 7 years now.
That's heartbreaking.
That's heartbreaking and frightening that they can just do this to people, that they're this network of abusers and, nefarious bastards in positions of power are able to, exert this kind of influence over society as a whole.
Yeah.
So, what type of things was he telling you at first when he was having these flashbacks?
I mean, it started that he had a flashback when looking in the mirror. This was very stunningly. There I realized that he had experienced violence. This was the starting, And then all of a sudden, the example I always tell, because it's the most horrific and also the most embarrassing, even to talk about it. He was tortured with a toilet brush. So he took a toilet brush, and all of a sudden he realized he had the memory. Oh, I know this thing. I know this toilet brush. And he was crying for hours, shouting, shivering, panicking, but not just, there are different ways a child can cry. As a parent, you see when it's panic, when it's horrific, even with children from others. So he had this crying he was crying like crazy. And first I thought, well, yes, they might have beaten him with this, until I found out over hours or even weeks that they used the handle of the toilet brush to penetrate him with that, sodomize him with that. And on one hand, you know, you have a tortured child, there is no doubt that this happened. On the other hand, just imagine you as a parent now have to go with this information to police, the prosecution office, and tell them, well, yes, this happened. Who should believe you? So these groups are very bestial, brilliant, to always put the blame on you as a concerned parent as well on the children, so no one would believe it. During all these torture happenings, there was also waterboarding. He was rolled into a carpet. He was trained to act as a baby prostitute. And you as a parent, you have to explain prosecution office and police that this can happen, that it does happen, and that even many perpetrators were present, whom he had to name mommy or daddy. So you come with this quite weird stuff. If you don't know anything about satanic ritual abuse, child trafficking, or MKUltra, you have no chance to get someone to listen to you. And what's very interesting, I several times offered authorities, they can examine me psychiatrically, they can even have my son after a detailed examination of an MRT CT, and if my son wouldn't have anything, he can live with his father. I offered really everything. They denied. So it's very difficult when you're in this situation as a parent to even get an examination for these children.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the Istanbul Protocol from the United Nations. So hundreds of specialists wrote this in torture cases, a guideline for acting in torture cases. This is now the official recommendation of the United Nations, and the point is no one knows about it or claims not to know about it. And if you have a tortured child, no one is helping these children.
Now, when this first started happening, what did you think it might be at first, or did you automatically think that it was this?
We in Austria, we don't know about satanic ritual abuse. We don't know about MKUltra. So I had no idea what was going on. But thanks to the information my son was able to give me about the perpetrators, I realized that they are well educated. They are university professors. They are physicians, psychologists. So I knew that they are not idiots, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought, no, there must be something, a bigger structure behind that, because they wouldn't risk it and they would not do it so professionally, because I saw that the way he was trained as a baby prostitute was highly professional. It was heartbreaking, you know, heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. But I realized, no, this was done on a kind of extremely professional level. Or situations when he changed personalities. I named it, he changed his status, his consciousness. I did not realize that he already was a split personality with a deliberate multiple personality disorder. I did not notice it, but I described it differently. So there was a personality that did not recognize me anymore. I was with him on the street, and all of a sudden he changed into this altar, and he did not see me anymore. So he was like standing alone on the street, trying to join some other adults. And from such small, let's say small things, I realized, oh my God, this is a huge systematic thing that was done on him.
So if you suspect that your child may be a victim of this, what would be some of the symptoms that you would want to look out for, aside from, what you've already said?
Yeah, I mean, the first symptoms were that during the first visits, he came home very ill, I was at the doctor's nearly twice a week, and the doctors, the pediatrician, meaning the child physician, always prescribed him antibiotics. Now I know they prescribed antibiotics to heal his inner wounds, because you nearly never see some wounds or bruises. The bite torture is used, so you cannot track waterboarding. You cannot track.
Right.
They roll the children, for example, into car beds and beat them there, because this doesn't leave any traces.
Mm-hmm.
And he already was clean, we say in German, meaning he went on his own, on his body. So I did not check his genitals, his anus, so in detail. And what I know now is, or pricking with needles, they pricked his tooth root canal. I mean, everything you can imagine that doesn't leave visible traces. So the first symptoms are that they get ill, very ill, and are stopping to talk. He was already talking, he stopped to talk. He needed sutures again, and he had enormous mood swings, unexplainable at the beginning. And after he was already programmed, at least the basic steps of programming were done. After some breaks with visits, all the things came out one after the next over months. Another symptom, this is very important because it's also heartbreaking. Those children are always surrounded from perpetrators. So take very care when your child likes maybe a family member or a former friend or a friend, and all of a sudden the toddler is telling you this person is not nice anymore. Take really care when this happens, especially in this age. When it's a 5-year-old child, maybe it's just the mood, or the child might be just playing, but take it especially serious when it's a toddler, because these groups are, meaning no single person can do this harm, so they're operating in groups, so you have involved neighbors, you have involved family members, and you have involved acquaintances. And it's also convincing the child that you're cooperating unconsciously, because the child is told your mommy or also your daddy. I also know many concerned fathers as protective fathers. They always tell the child, your mother or your father want that you have now out. She is agreeing on that. And it's very stressing on a soul level for you as a protective parent, having no clue about the situation, and the child who has experienced this double situation, that you are in contact with the perpetrators, meaning the mother or the father is in contact with the perpetrators. And my son was convinced over weeks that I wanted that he got tortured. It took me
It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, was there a family member involved in your case?
Yes. Actually, my whole family is involved. It took me quite a while to find this out. First, he told me quite late about family members involved, because they were close. They were. I was phoning with them and telling them about his torture. He was listening that I was phoning with family members. So I was even allowing his so-called grandmother that she's babysitting him when I was at court or doing something. So of course, this is also done to re-trigger him, and she re-triggered him, and so on. So I brought this to court. Nevertheless, the courts ignored it. And now I know, of course, years later, that I grew up in a total MK Ultra family.
Well, and from what I read on your page, it seems like the courts were complicit in covering it up and making sure that it never saw the light of day.
Yeah. And what I also know now, they were phoning around. I mean, I have many former acquaintances or friends were involved. So seemingly it was a whole setup my whole life. I did not realize, because I did not realize that I'm programmed MK'd myself. So on the one hand, it was heartbreaking for me to see that old acquaintances or friends were joining this crime, because my son already told me. And on the other hand, I felt so free. It was so much healing in his information for me, myself, you know. That sounds a bit weird, but truth is always healing. And I also realized this with my son first. Every single story he was able to tell me meant healing for him, like instant healing, like this finger snip, you know. So as heartbreaking as it is, it's healsome.
Well, that's good, at least. Silver lining in that.
Yeah. And sorry, one important thing for all parents that might be in this situation. What's extremely heartbreaking is my son claimed, for example, that I'm not his mommy anymore. He was not allowed to call me mommy, but Andrea. He named me with my first name. And it's heartbreaking when you're a dedicated parent and all of a sudden your son claims, you're not my father anymore, you're not my mother anymore. And it took me actually years to find out what was going on, until there was this tape from the Pizzagate researchers. They have it on audio, how it comes to the point that a child has to say to others, to strangers, mom and dad, done with plain horrific torture.
And how old is your son now?
2 to 2.5 years. This was the period.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah.
How old is he right now, and then present?
Currently present, he's 10 years old now.
So this has been going on for a while.
Yeah, ongoing for a while, yes. And the last thing, the last horrific thing that happened, I mean, already in 2011, when he was 2.5 years old, he told me that he would now be a girly, that he would not get children, and told me about castration, that he told him at least that he would have him castrated. They do this quite often, crushing the inner genitals or pricking with needles the inner genitals, or taking out the bulbourachal gland. But that's something technical, you can read that up on my website. And in addition to this, they sent me a picture in January 2019, a few months ago, without any comment, where I saw that he already lost all his adult teeth. This is often caused via torture, electroshock, or via other means. So they show me openly that my beloved son is tortured. I wrote to court again, prosecution office and family court. And all I get back is there is no initial suspicion, not to even have a look on the boy, not to have him examined in detail, you know.
Well, and it makes you wonder just how much of this stuff are the authorities covering up, you know, because if it's not just one person, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, it took me some time to find out. At least at the moment, I think that, to be honest, I think I was groomed for that role, to create a kind of strategic entanglement machinery, because every single doctor, physician, psychologist, therapist, teacher, kindergartner, prosecution officer, judge, police officer, they are all entangled, because it would be their duty to help this child. And by covering up, preventing him from basic medical examinations or treatments is a crime, also here in Austria. A severe crime, because torture, it's like a murder. Even you can get jailed for torture or helping to or allowing torture. Actually, you can be jailed even 60 years afterwards.
Yeah, there's no. It's here we call it a statute of limitations, and it's how much time has passed between when a crime was actually committed and the present day.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for the technical term. Same here, and so I'm very worried, extremely worried, that they're going to kill my son, then claiming, well, yes, the child had an accident.
So, what do you estimate is the point of all this? Like, why are they doing this to these children?
I mean, it's we call it. I mean, you just have. I mean, if you're a psychopath, and if you think like a psychopath, I grew up like with psychopaths, so I know much about how they think. You just have advantages. You can first use these children as part of the basic programming and mind fracture as baby prostitutes. You can earn, the younger they are, the more money you get. Then on the secondly, then you have the satanic component. You can do a lot of black magic rituals, energy transfers, experimentations within some satanic cults. And then you have the third row of physicians doing plain cultural research, improving their programs, or are even trying to sell a certain type of program. So everyone is earning from that. And on top, it's known from the Nazis started with that. You can entangle a whole population with this crime. We know, for example, many whistleblowers are talking about it, that, for example, you can be invited to a huge event and you're very proud because you think, well, yes, that's important for my career. Your ego is there and you're so happy you're invited, so you go there. And we know that then, for example, they're mixing drink into your drinks, they're mixing some kind of drugs. Mm-hmm. And then they let you participate in some rituals. So, of course, this is filmed, and from then on, if you don't go to police office, to prosecution office, and hand yourself in, reporting about the drugs and everything, you are entangled. Mm-hmm. And the next step, they also can ask for your children and grandchildren.
Yeah, we've known for a long time that they use that type of stuff as a blackmail device.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't even have to necessarily participate in it. Just a picture of you in a room with it going on is enough.
Yeah. I mean, this is the most common, even for those who are not within SR and MKUltra. But here in Austria, seemingly, I mean, we have here the old Nazi home base. I mean, Adolf Hitler was Austrian. The SS Academy of Physicians was brought to Austria, to Graz. That's a town 2 hours away from Vienna in 1940. So still the SS Academy of Physicians was never shut down. So we here have such a high density of Satanists, of MKUltra in general population, but yeah.
So are you saying that this is basically being perpetrated by a Fourth Reich?
this is very interesting. Yes, we have here Fourth Reich, but we have here, at least my research, as my research goes at the moment, I think we have here extremely strong Thule. Thule, I mean the combination of real Fourth Reich and the Vatican. Now also, unfortunately, in Vienna, also having large cooperations with Mossad and with Russian Secret Service. Vienna, for example, was always said to be a melting pot of all secret services from the east and the west, because it's the country on the former border of east and west, or the city. So we here have any secret services, and they are sitting. I mean, for us, it's here the Nazis, there the Jews, there the Muslims, there this group, but we know that in their Freemasonic lodges or in the power centers, they are sitting all around one table.
Yeah, well, in our own research, we discovered that the Thule was essentially behind the rise of the Nazi Party.
Yeah,
they basically installed Hitler.
They installed Hitler. They financed him. I mean, there was so much money there for research, for all this military equipment, for the space, for the saucers, and so on. Even just look at the clothes, they were made by the later designer, Hugo Boss. So they had designer clothes. Who paid this in a country that had no money after the First World War?
Well, they still had all that loot stashed in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And I've learned anything from living in a military town, it's that you would not believe the lengths that people will go to get funding for things.
No
Really?
doubt, yes.
And yeah, funding is king. It's funny because the first time I ever heard anything about this, about the whole concept of SRA, satanic ritual abuse, was that it was from somebody I used to be friends with in high school. And their mom told me about this, that, she basically had gotten turned on to a conspiracy theory about this worldwide network of pedos that was basically run by the Vatican.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And that the Jesuit order was actually at the center of it.
Yes, exactly. I always learned at the Jesuits. And the interesting thing, for example, the brother of Werner von Braun, the rocket scientist and head of NASA and so on, his brother, Sigismund, was a diplomat in the Vatican.
Really?
Yes.
No, I did not know that.
So you have the connections with one click, Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, we here have mostly, of course, Nazis or former Nazis. But especially in our own case, my son recognized perpetrators from Nazi families as well from Jewish families committing the crime hand in hand. So that doesn't make the situation easier, because actually, when I'm going against one group, the other comes and attacks me back, and they're protecting each other.
Yeah, and I think that it's a mistake to kind of call them, Nazis are behind it, because Nazis were just a creation of occult societies, and Thule was basically all the ones that were in Germany at that time. They kind of sucked them all up and formed the super occult. But so I mean, even though the Nazi Party is long gone, it doesn't matter. The actually driving force behind it is still well and kicking, still rock and rolling. And then you get the ties to the OTO from that. Did you want to speak on that, Dan?
The OTO, I didn't get that.
Well, as far as I know, Aleister Crowley started the OTO, and during
OTO, yes, of course.
During World War II, there were magical duels between the British lodges, the leftovers of the Golden Dawn, and the OTO,
right? But
versus the Thule and the Vril. They were opposed to each other.
Well, they basically all kind of started out of like Blavatsky teachings, from what I can understand.
Right.
Yeah, and the OGO was even founded in Vienna, Austria.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
The closest chapter here right now, I think, is in Baltimore.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's probably 6 to 8 hours away from us, depending on traffic.
Wow. And you know, the interesting thing, for me at least, but it might be also interesting for you, for example, perpetrators, my son recognized, especially the older ones, American survivors in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 60s recognized the same perpetrators as their programmers, as their handlers, as their trainers. So this group is operating worldwide, and they're not so huge as it seems. My impression is that the core programmers are still alive. Mengele is still alive. Aribert Heim is still alive, and so on. And they are not giving out of their hands the basic knowledge. That's at least my impression.
So where do you think he's hiding at if Mengele's still around? You think he's in Brazil? You think
Argentina?
There are many reports that Mengele is in New York, looking
New York,
like in his 50s or 60s.
Really?
I believe that too.
No.
And first of us, was studying comparative literature, and there, of course, was dealing a lot of with the Third Reich and the Jewish survivor reports of the concentration camps. And some of them were saying they are still here. They were saying this in the 90s. They are still here. They are still attacking us. And I was wondering what's going on with them. Why were they so afraid, So there are many Jewish survivors also claiming that. The same MK Ultra survivor, Wendy Hoffman, she's also Jewish. She's reporting, that's highly interesting, that Joseph Mengele was starting her MK Ultra program in the early 40s in New York, long before the war ended. So this is all a cover-up. Everything was prepared that the Nazis then will be transferred to America, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah.
Officially on the books, we had Operation Paperclip for the scientists.
Project Paperclip.
Excuse me. But, like I was saying about the OTO and all these different occult orders basically having the same core beliefs and stuff, it kind of lends to, the theory of them hooking up across the water. So it doesn't really matter, German, Nazis, whatever. It's all this occultic order. So very easily for them to have, we have those same type of societies and everything here in the U.S., and we had them at that time here in the U.S. So, I mean, there's your network.
Yeah. And I think they have, on one hand, they have this regression technology for themselves, and on the other hand, they're playing a lot with time travel. So I have concrete memories on my own programming now that I was talking with one of my programmers recently, meaning one year ago.
So, well, how did that conversation go?
I
mean, I don't know what else to say to that.
mean, on my own story, just to give a frame for that, it took me years, even after the situation with my son happened, that I realized that I was total MK Ultra too, because my programming is on one hand extremely well done and extremely well hidden. So when I'm changing alters, you nearly see no difference on that. And no one. For example, I'm a friend with Misha Johnston, and she's working with me for years actually. And she also said, I cannot see a difference on you. So this, just to give a frame. But over the years, I got some hints, and I realized, when I was in Norway actually, I realized that during deep meditation, all of a sudden, I realized that a kind of portal was opening it felt as if my bed would get wheels. I was driven into another room, and then an airlock of a military base was opened. I was in plain shock and shouted, "No, I don't agree, I do not consent." And then I was driven back. So I realized that I was fetched by a portal technology. And
So when you say portal technology, are you talking about, like, what people from who claim to be part of a secret space program or have been in a breakaway civilization? Is that the same portal technology that we're talking about?
no, much more practical. I mean, if they want to fetch you, they need a kind of electromagnetic frequency, I call it. I'm unfortunately not a technician, but it just can fetch you wherever you are. So this I was experienced on my own, that it just take you're lying on your bed or you're sleeping, and it just take you, and it feels for you, it feels as if your bed would get wheels and you're transported into I don't know if I was on this planet or off planet, but it just take you to a completely different location. And the same way I was brought back. And there I have memories talking, for example, to one of the not so well-known Nazi programmers, Arbeit Heim, but he was a close colleague from Joseph Mengele.
Now, do you think there may be any possibility that the portal technology or the leaving could be screen memories?
No. No, because it was not just once. I had many of them. I don't think it was the screen memory, actually. No. Because also during regression it was confirmed. So I have memories on my own, meaning I made the experience during a deep meditation several times, and during regression it was confirmed. I mean, but talking about screen memories, yes, I mean all could be screen memories, but it would be far too much for screen memories, you know. I also found out during a session that I was programmed at the Wewelsburg Castle in Germany.
And that's the place with the black sun on the floor, right?
Yes, it's Himmler's occult castle.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out later I did research, many are telling the same story, that they were lying there on the black sun symbols, getting programmed or tortured or whatsoever. So it cannot be a screen memory of all of us, you know?
Right. I wasn't like trying to be accusatory or anything, but you hear.
No, I understand. I question myself a lot about it, and actually, maybe I think often too long.
Well, it's been discussed in some of the circles that our show circulates through recently about how they now have the ability to basically implant false memories in your head, Dark City style.
Mm-hmm.
They can take a memory from one person and implant it into another.
Yeah, of course they can. But there are always how's it called, injuries on your body. So why I do have these problems with my coccyx or my tailbone, without having any memories about an injuries, why do I have quite crippled pointing fingers without any memories? Of course from torture. Why do I have memories like actually I had the ability to store memories like an audio recorder or like a video recorder in my brain. There are too many things that cannot get explained via consciousness transfer or what you're saying, you know. But I'm very aware of the situation that not everything is true. And I'm very careful in my research, therefore.
Right.
And I'm just talking about things where I'm 100% sure.
We are like the opposite of that. We go on air every week and just make complete fools out of ourselves. Hopefully not this time, though. I think we're doing all right.
It was just ask me, yeah?
But we're not. I mean, on our show generally, we're not afraid of wild conjecture.
Yeah, we speculate quite often.
A great deal.
It's pretty much the point of our show.
It is wild speculation. But, you know, we also try to provide a platform where anybody can come on, tell their truth in a non-judgmental atmosphere, and we let the audience decide what stands up to them.
Mm-hmm.
And
I want to thank you for coming on and talking with us.
yeah, I mean, I understand that you're taking incredible risks by doing this, but, the risk by not doing it is even bigger, right?
I made a decision. I mean, my son, shortly before he was taken, I asked him. We knew it could happen, because there was the imminent danger, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him what I shall do, meaning I asked him if I should focus on him or fight for him and all his little friends, and he said, no, please fight, of course, in his language in those days. I shall fight for him and all those other children. So he told me what to do, and I'm going on with that, of course.
So how would you go about trying to, or would it even be advisable to merge personalities that have been fractured through trauma-based mind control?
You mean in terms of healing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long on one hand it's a long process, and on the other hand it's going very quickly, depending if Secret Service or the cults who think they own you are leaving you alone or not. So, for example, Misha Johnston is doing wonderful sessions with me as a hypnotherapist, but for example, after every single session, I'm fetched and memories are again deleted. So I just have the audio recordings, and it's very difficult to come into this memory flow. So healing is possible very quickly, in my opinion, when you're left in peace.
Yeah.
That's my message,
Mm-hmm.
And there is also, like we have from other secret space whistleblowers, like Penny Bradley, who's a friend of mine and a colleague. She's also under attack. So the point is, are you left in peace? Are you attacked by direct energy weapons? Are you poisoned? Are there murder attempts against you? Or are you even fetched and your memories are wiped out again and again and again? Mm-hmm. And what cannot be healed, what cannot be healed, for example, are if you have mutilations, of course, this cannot be healed. Mm-hmm. And even if I would get back my son now, I cannot give him back his childhood.
Right.
Same here with me, but altars can be integrated, altars can be found. It's not such a big deal. But most of us are not. They don't let us live in peace. That's from most of us. This is the problem, I think.
Now, during all of your healing and everything, did you ever figure out what their intent for you was with your mind fracture?
The intent for my mind.
Yeah. What did they wanted to use you for?
What I have found out so far, but this section is blocked the most. I was used. I have memories of being used for small agency jobs. I was used in Montauk. Seemingly, my ability was to search or to find certain things. They use this ability a lot.
Now, is that something that was kind of like astral travel or remote viewing, or was that something different?
My memories are more remote viewing based.
Okay, so they were using you as a remote viewer.
This, at least I know at the moment, yeah. But there are not so many memories at the moment. At least it's very difficult to find them.
Mm-hmm.
And seemingly, in some point in time, they decided to use me for the role I'm playing now, because it's for me it cannot be a coincidence, you know. Also, the studies made me whole education. I mean, why did I study comparative literature? So you're quite good in observing, you're good in puzzling text pieces. Then I have an education in business, in statistics, then also as a counselor, trainer, coach. So I don't think this is a coincidence. I think they really trained me for this role to be capable of doing what I'm doing now. So it's a bestial, cynical game, actually, you know?
It seems almost counterintuitive.
Yeah, and first you are happy and think, oh my God, I'm so lucky that I did all these educations. And over the years you tend to think, well, was it really my decision?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I kind of... When earlier you were talking about how when you shift from personality to personality, it's almost indistinguishable. So that's kind of scary for me because it's like, well, how do you even know then, like, how much of what you're doing is wanted to be done and how much isn't? Like, is this a programming? Like, do they want you to come on my show right now? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm used to that. Everyone who's programmed is used to that. You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's normal. I don't know it differently. I recognize it now when I have. It's the classical fight or flight modus. These are signs to me. Oh, now you are in a program. Now you are in an altar that is doing that or suggesting this. Or where I found it out, for example, when I'm in the early years actually, when I'm extremely ill, nearly collapsing, I start to look the brightest and start to shine, you know. So this is done by extreme torture. No one is allowed to realize how you're really feeling.
Yeah, the sense of isolation has got to be overwhelming.
Isolation?
Yeah, of not being able to, having the secret kept up that you can't just tell to the world that this awful stuff happened.
I mean, I can tell the world.
Oh no, I mean like for the victims.
Isolation is a huge point in my life. That's why I stopped here. They keep me well isolated. I'm living here in a small studio actually in Vienna, and they're keeping me in principle isolated for years now. I have fortunately my friends over the world which you can meet over the internet, but there are no local friends. There is no local network, and over the years, it's maybe also interested, I even was brought, after this thing happened with Lucky, my son, into even more severe isolation over Secret Service agents. They come as helpers, they come as friends, and over months and years you realize, well, and now I'm completely isolated.
Now, have you lived in Austria your entire life?
Mostly, yeah. Yeah, I lived several months in London in the beginning in 2013, when I tried desperately to find help for my son. I lived and worked in London for about 6 to 9 months. Then I lived also in Asia because I had to fly after murder attempt. I was in a Buddhist monastery to find some healing. Then I was a few months in Switzerland, and I was in Norway. And most of the time I was accompanied by Secret Service officials. So they're really eager to prevent you from working on one hand, re-trigger you, reprogram you, keep you ready for whatsoever, target you, and what they also do, especially in the early years, they do a lot of what we call, this is extremely important for the audience, they do a lot of what we call operative psychology. This means erosion of the soul, Zersetzung. They really try to kill you by killing your soul or hurting your soul so much that you either get really insane, or you commit suicide, or you knock at the door of a psychiatry on your own and ask for being allowed to live there for the rest of your life. And this is extremely dangerous. I'm not joking about this. For example, one of the first helpers that appeared was from the Secret Service, and he wanted to help me and my son. And sitting in my living room with him, having coffee, all of a sudden thought, oh my God, I have the feeling now I'm getting crazy, to be honest. There was so much cognitive dissonance in this meeting. And until I found out that he was one of the torturers of my son.
Huh.
And it sounds very easy now here when I tell you this, but when you are in this situation, it's nearly unbearable. And they love, for example, to send you agents that were involved in the torture. It's extremely important to breaking you down, hurting you on a soul level, on your consciousness level, because your consciousness knows it, you know. Just you as a person don't know it. And after this did not work, because when you find it out once, you find it out, it doesn't work anymore. What they also did, for your audience, this is also very important. They recorded the torture events of my beloved son, meaning he's crying, he's begging for help, crying for me. And then they sent me this happenings over white noises. So the same is going on. Your consciousness, on a soul level, you're listening to that, but you don't hear it, of course, because it's white noises. And I promise you, if you don't find out, you're getting insane. It's nearly unbearable. As soon as you find out, it stops, and it doesn't hurt you so much, and then you can try to record it, and then most often it immediately stops.
Do you think this is sort of along the lines of what was happening to the diplomats in Cuba, and there were a couple other places? China, I think, was one. There was U.S. diplomats claiming to be sonically attacked.
I think yes, because even if it's not your child, it's breaking down every sentient being. It's unbearable. It's really unbearable. Because on a soul level, it's eroding your soul. It's weakening you, and you have no idea because you don't hear anything. You know. So this, my opinion, yes, this could be.
So do you know of any way that you could possibly shield yourself from something like that, aside from living in a deprivation chamber?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to know, because what you know cannot kill you, or cannot drive you insane. You can do something about it. General protection is very difficult, for example, because I was sitting in Norway in a small little fjord, you know, and they came to electroshock me in my living room from outside.
What?
Yes.
That's terrible.
And these devices, for example, can be bought in any shop worldwide, even for private. Even we could buy it if we wanted to, you know. So it's more important to find out what's going on and about the mechanism, how these Secret Service operatives and the satanic crews are operating, then to protect, because you cannot be so protected. they most often find a new way, you know?
Right. Always a countermeasure.
Yeah, and for example, in the settlement where I live here in Vienna, half of the settlement thinks I would have committed suicide because a Secret Service agent told them so.
Really?
The other third thinks that I'm insane.
So, when just to clarify, when you say Secret Service, are you you're talking about something over there? You're not talking about the U.S. Secret Service, are you?
No, and here in Vienna, I talk, of course, about Austrian Secret Service.
Okay.
And I even mentioned them towards courts after a murder attempt, with name, with picture, with birthday, you know?
So,
and they don't mind.
In Austria, what would the Secret Service be charged with? What would be their main job? See, here in America, the Secret Service is pretty much just to protect the president.
Okay. Did not know that.
Yeah, we've got the CIA and the NSA. Those are our intelligence agencies.
Okay. The DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. There's a whole slew of we call them alphabet soup agencies.
We got like 50 of them, but the Secret Service, they're just basically to protect the president.
Yeah, the CIA and the FBI are the two big intelligence agencies that most people know about.
Okay. Here in Austria, we have the situation that the general population do not even know that Secret Service exists. So even when you start to talk about Secret Service, they more tend to think that you're insane, that they're so brainwashed. So this means also that Austrian Secret Service is excellent, because a population who does not know that it exists they did a brilliant job.
So this would be more akin to like the Men in Black than the CIA. The Men in Black being like the people who come that don't exist to investigate or to question people after they witness a UFO event or something like that, or to come and collect evidence. They don't technically exist.
Yeah, they're part of an organization that's so secret that there's not a name for it.
Yeah, something like this, yes. And they look like we do. They are caretakers of houses, they're pensionists, they are invalids. They really have a brilliant stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. We all have, at least here in Austria, we all have in our minds the James Bond type, you know.
Right.
And when someone is not looking like this type, it cannot be. Yeah. So.
You don't got a flamethrower in your watch.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure a good portion of Europe actually remembers when there were secret police.
Yeah.
So. It's extremely difficult here in Austria, and here in Austria we are not allowed to talk about UFOs and not about aliens.
Really?
Yes, we are so brainwashed. Even I have to admit, I have really trouble to talk about aliens because it's so forbidden here that you don't dare, you know.
Yeah.
American culture is pretty obsessed with the idea of aliens, actually.
Yeah. There's actually a state in the U.S. that has a law that makes it illegal to get abducted by an alien.
Really?
You believe that?
Yeah, but this is free speech, and we must not forget we are here in the Nazi home base. So why are they brainwashing the population and even to dare to think about it? Of course, we have a lot of alien contacts, a lot of bases, a lot of UFOs, but it's the best protection, no?
Yeah, I guess to give it the giant stigma. I mean, it used to have a pretty big stigma here too, but it's loosened up in the last 20, 30 years, I'd say.
Well, and I think that, okay, so yeah, speaking of the CIA, there was somebody who basically said that, anything you see on TV, anything that you hear on the radio, anything that makes its way into the mass consciousness is what we call culture jamming. It's, basically the powers that be taking these ideas, and grinding them into the American zeitgeist. Mm-hmm. So...
And let's see, you're over there in Austria, so you would be familiar with the Tavistock Institute?
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of that technique comes from them with long-range penetration and repeated shock to the psyche on a mass level.
And so I think the way it worked here is that, keep this underlying sort of theme that if anybody talks about, UFOs or extraterrestrials, well, then yeah, they're crazy.
Yeah.
But since we're having such a hard time making everyone who's seen something in the sky look crazy, we're just going to either not talk about it, or we're just going to play it up and make it part of the culture.
Yeah. No, you had. You really have freedom of speech. You must not forget this.
Yeah,
And
for
you
now.
And you had gorgeous whistleblowers, activist scientists over the last 60 years, actually, who did so much from any angle of these truth scenes. Basic field research. Anthony Hilder, Cooper, I now missed his first name.
Bill Cooper.
Bill Cooper. Yeah.
William Cooper.
Then all those dealing with SRA and MK Ultra. So without you Americans, I think I wouldn't be alive anymore, because you would have broken me, you know.
Well, as on behalf of America, thank you.
Yeah, seriously.
Thank you, America.
Well, and I get the feeling that a lot of this is coming up in our own backyard. We just had recently had a couple of stories that we shared in the group about how and this is like in the last 2 days, 2 major child smuggling rings were broken up. One in Detroit and one that stretched from Virginia to Georgia.
And
Child smuggling rings.
yeah, and we are in Virginia.
Oh, okay. I mean, this news about smuggling rings, I mean, this is great for the concerned children, but then maybe you save a few hundreds, you know. But it's more important, in my opinion, to get out with the whole thing, what was done on them, that they're programmed. Because if you don't know about programming, yeah, well, then they're taken from the smuggling rings and are placed into foster places where they are ongoing programmed or used for whatever, you know. So we have to raise the awareness, in my opinion.
Yeah.
How the procedure is done on toddlers and small children. Because otherwise we cannot stop the whole issue. And these children are becoming perpetrators on their own, not all of them, of course, but many. So the number is rising, of course. Also the number of perpetrators are rising.
Well, and there's a never-ending litany of horror stories that emerge from CPS, Child Protective Services, they call them here in America, the whole foster care system. There, juvenile courts. There's a never-ending laundry list of horror stories emerging from those sectors.
Yeah, I mean, Nancy Sheffer, I think she was an American senator. She was collecting materials about CPS, your CPS, and she was suicided with her husband. I think one day before the hearing, 3 days before the hearing.
Wow, that's something we're gonna have to dig into.
Yeah, and much is published about her. So Nancy Sheffer is her name.
Sounds familiar. Was she investigating Haiti?
She was investigating the CPS.
Oh, just CPS. So she wasn't investigating child trafficking in Haiti.
Not Haiti, but as far as I know, not Haiti. But child trafficking and CPS and money laundering there out of child trafficking.
Well, it's commonly known, at least in conspiracy theory circles, that there are terrible things being done behind closed doors by the elites. The Clinton Foundation is involved in child trafficking in Haiti. This guy Jeff Epstein, who has what's referred to as Rape Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The Clintons, Trump, they've all made multiple trips there. The Clintons have been there probably about twice as often as Trump, but he's been there.
And then you've got the
Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, the Hollywood guy.
Just recently too, we have the Nixium cult getting broken up.
Yeah,
it was the same type of thing. I haven't heard anything about children involved in that one, but this was more like adult trafficking.
Keith Raniere got locked up because there were pictures of him taken with a 15-year-old girl.
Okay.
The whole Pizzagate thing, and of course, all the people who want to laugh at that, Pizzagate's not real, thought that it was just about the guy who owned that pizza parlor or whatever it was, like a laser tag place or whatever the hell it was. It was like a second-rate Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, I mean, this is extremely important, and I'm so glad that other guys are doing this research. But what's for me more interesting, all those guys you mentioned, Weinstein, Clinton, whatever, all those are under MK Ultra themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So also my son told me, this was so interesting, heartbreaking. He told me that other toddlers were present and they were forced to do him ouch. Ouch was our code for torture,
Mm-hmm.
So the small ones, children of the perpetrators, were forcing their own, meaning perpetrators were forcing their own children to torture my son and other children. So they are. This is part of their MK Ultra program, that they have to do this to other children. And when you see them growing up, then you have the adult versions of Weinstein and Clinton and however they are called, or Bush, or also here in Austria the same, no difference. By the way, Arnold Schwarzenegger, also involved in all this, is Austrian.
You mentioned Bill Clinton being MK.
Yeah.
I met Bill Clinton one time, and I was there. He was campaigning for his wife in like 2008 or something like that, Hillary Clinton, and he was doing some speech for her at a gymnasium. And at the time, I was involved with a activist group, and we used to run down politicians and ambush journalism basically, and ask them questions they didn't want to even hear, never mind answer. So I went there to ask him about the Bohemian Grove. Mm-hmm. And when I got to him, it was so strange. It was just like this, the energy in the room was like he was a rock star or something. He gets done with a speech and he's doing the meet and greet thing, and it was empty. Like his face, it was just like, I shook his hand and I asked him a question, and he just was blank face, and he wasn't even there. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's this famous video from him online. I don't know if you know it, where he gets makeup before a speech, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And there you see that there's nothing there, that he's just a shell.
It seemed that way to me. I mean, he did the speech well. You could tell, he seemed alive and something was in there while he was giving the speech. But afterwards, it was just like he just kind of was looking through everyone. Like he didn't even see anything in the room.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is more important, at least for me, it's more important to point to the fact that they are programmed themselves. That doesn't mean that they have a lot of guilt. Of course, they need to take back their responsibility and liability,
Mm-hmm.
But it's important that we know that they are programmed themselves, so they were programmed for these roles. So you have all these perverted torture events with small children. I'm not talking about sex, because for a child it's always torture.
Mm-hmm.
When you just think of the body measures of a child or a toddler and an adult man or even woman, it's torture.
Mm-hmm.
But they are programmed to do this. And of course, it's still the responsibility, even programmed, it's their responsibility to seek help, to stop it, and to overtake responsibility and liability. But we must see that they're victims on their own, and that even the children are programmed into this role to become perpetrators then later on. So if you don't see it, if you don't recognize this, it never stops.
I mean, that's kind of like a common thing too with molestation cases and stuff like that aren't necessarily tied into SRA or some big giant group. Just because there are people out there who do that, and the children themselves turning around and doing it to other children. I don't know if they think that it's normal at that point or whatever because it was done to them. Outside of the whole ritual abuse thing. So just that alone, and then on top of it, you add the programming. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's no wonder.
Yeah. And I mean, many survivors are speaking out and say, I want to stop this. So you have the decision. I made the decision, many others did. So not all victims are becoming bad perpetrators.
Right. So what do you think, I guess, the stats are, like, as someone like yourself who realize what's happened to them, as opposed to the however many people out there who don't even have a clue that has happened to them?
Millions.
So, I guess if you are going to step up to the plate, so to speak, with that, you kind of got to realize that it's happened to you first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish there was just a beam we can use to undo it all. But unfortunately, if there is one, they ain't giving it to us.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to force a violation of causality, and once you've done this kind of shit to a person, there's no undoing it. You know what I mean? The damage is done.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean that, for example, different levels of programming. Not everyone gets. I'm now cynical. Gets the governmental programming, from the Secret Service with lifelong torture included. There are many steps from basic child abuse to governmental MK Ultra programming, and many gray zones, So that's why I think, or many are talking about that millions are concerned.
Without giving away too much information about where I work,
Everybody knows where you work, Dan.
all right, well, I was in line I was, at work the other day, and this kid says to his parents, he's like, Mom, I want the Starburst. And she's like, no, you're going to get the Skittles. You're going to support the troops. Because apparently there are these new red, white, and blue Skittles the other day. And I'm like, wow, brainwashing starts at home, huh?
Wow, that's something else right there.
Okay.
That was just, a non-related anecdote.
No, it's, I'm saying, like the cultural conditioning, that programming runs so deep that, it's little things like that add up to overall programming. I mean, a computer program is made of lots of bits of code, right? And that bit of code right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. All right, so we're about running out of time here. So, again, I'd like to thank you for coming on. Her website, if you guys are interested in checking it out, there's a lot of cool stuff up there. I was looking through it. I'm going to add some to this video later in post. And we'll be posting it to the group when this airs. So go check that out. Andrea, did you have anything in closing that you wanted to say?
Yes, to parents out there, I just want to mention I did a lot of work on trauma-basedmindcontrol.com. The most important section is the forensic chapters. And if you are in this situation, try to find immediately a lawyer and go together with the lawyer to a hospital. Maybe you paid even privately for it, and do an MRT, CT, and nuclear medical examination of your child. Document everything, even the reaction of the child towards the hospital atmosphere and equipment, because most often it's accompanied by flashbacks. If you don't do this, you have no proof in your hand, and most often your child is taken away. And if you have any question, you can reach me on Facebook or over the website trauma-basedmindcontrol.com.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming on, and we hope to speak to you soon. It's been a great discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And wish you a nice evening in Virginia then.
You too.
Yeah, have a great, thanks for coming on, and again, thanks for just the level of bravery it takes to come forward with this, and you're not backing down, and I mean that's the kind of courage this world needs if we're gonna try and
get on the path of fixing things.
Yeah, really, and get these rich nefarious elites that are manipulating humanity from the shadows. If we're going to cast off that yoke, then this is where it starts.
Yeah, thank you too for your work. I think we all are brave here, doing something. So everyone chose his topic, and I chose mine. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.